Lovelies, welcome back to my channel. My name is Jen. I'm the Urban Sewist, and this is the Urban Sewing Society, where we bring fashion and creativity to your neighborhood. This week we are going to get back into our upcycles, and as promised, this week is an upcycle that is related to my sustainable hair journey. So it is about an elevated t-shirt. And so I picked up this t-shirt just after I started my journey. I will link the company below. And I thought it was a great shirt. It actually fit really well, but I wanted to do a little something different with it. And I thought this was a great idea as we're moving into the summer and a lot of us have t-shirts around, and you're looking for something to do with them so that they don't look so ordinary. So here's a shirt on me. Again, a great fit. It's a women's fitted tee, and I really like it a lot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some organza, some white organza. I had some left over from a past project, and I'm going to use this to create sleeves on the shirt. So the first thing you want to do is take your shirt and lay it out nice and flat. Now, my recommendation is to do this on a t-shirt that you have either never washed or have only washed one time, because what happens with t-shirts is they start to stretch out of shape, and they're more difficult to sew when they're stretched out of shape like that. All right, and so the first step that we're going to do is we're going to remove the sleeves. Now, when you're cutting the sleeves off, you want to cut on the outside of the sleeve, on the sleeve portion. Okay, so it's important to leave that seam intact, and I'll zoom in here a little bit so that you can see better. But I'm going to take my scissors. I'm only cutting one layer at a time, and I'm cutting pretty close to the seam. And the reason that you want to leave the seam intact is so that you will have minimal stretching. Okay, so I am just cutting really close to the seam and just removing that sleeve all the way around. And then when you get to the underarm seam, just clip right across it. Okay, you can see just coming all the way around, all the way down, and getting to that underarm and just clipping that off. Easy peasy. So one of the mistakes I made when I cut my first sleeve is I cut that underarm seam, and so I want to make sure that you know that you are going to cut the bottom part of the sleeve off just above the stitching, and you want to keep this entire piece intact. So it should be one circle. And then next you're going to take the sleeve, fold it in half, place it on the fold of the fabric. Now again, I'm using organza. You can use a lightweight denim. You could use a woven fabric. You don't have to use organza, but you can use a contrasting fabric as long as it's not something super heavy. It does need to be lightweight if you're putting it on a t-shirt. A heavy wool or corduroy probably wouldn't do because it would probably sag a little bit. All right, so what I did was I took my invisible ink pen and I traced around the sleeve, leaving about 5 inches above and 5 inches below. And I maintained the shape of the sleeve, but I just made it really, really bigger than what the sleeve was. So the higher up you go at the top of the sleeve on the shoulder portion, the bigger and more puffy the sleeve is going to be. After I looked at it, I realized that I wanted more of a dip in the side, so I went down just a little bit on the underarm, curved in a little bit and went up, but I did not take anything else off the top of the sleeve. And so I think this is going to give me exactly what I want. So this is the example I was telling you on that first sleeve that I cut it open, and I shouldn't have cut it open. All right, now we are ready to start working on shaping the sleeve so that it can fit into the armhole. Okay, so the first thing that we are going to do is run a basting stitch around the top of the sleeve. And we are going to set the sewing machine, stitch to the longest stitch that you can find. On my machine at the top, I put it on a 5.0. So I just push the button up to 5.0, and that means that that is going to be an extremely long stitch. I'm going to use a straight stitch, and you want to make sure that you leave enough thread hanging off the end, at least 5 to 6 inches. Do not backstitch, only start sewing forward. And you're going to sew around that curve all the way up and over the shoulder, down to the other side. And you want to stop maybe about 2 or 3 inches from the underarm. And what are you waiting for? Click that like and subscribe button below. Okay, now you can see it a little bit from above. I am sewing at approximately 5/8 inch away from the edge of the fabric and using that really long stitch to go across the top. Okay, and the next step is to pull the bobbin thread and gather the top portion of the sleeve. This is why it's important that you're using the longest stitch possible so that you can pull the thread through and it gathers correctly. So here I am just pulling the top thread and smoothing or gathering the rest of the top of the sleeve together, pulling from one end to the other, and then making sure that I have the right amount of gathers in the upper portion of the sleeve. Now, after you've done gathering the top portion of the sleeve, you want to bring together the pieces together, and you're going to stitch the underarm stitch. Once you're done with that, you're going to attach the remaining portion of the sleeve to the bottom. Uh-oh, we got a little camera action here. So now I'm just stitching at 5/8 of an inch in the underarm portion, being sure to backstitch at the top and the bottom. Okay, here I'm going back, and the bottom part of the t-shirt sleeve, remember I was saying earlier that I had cut the underarm portion. I'm just stitching it back together to make it one full circle because we're going to use this part of the sleeve as the band at the bottom. So I'm just stitching the inside underarm back together right here. Okay, using that leftover piece from the bottom of the original sleeve, we're going to connect that to the bottom part of the sleeve, right sides together, and you will pin the organza all the way around. Now my suggestion is to run a stitch around the bottom of the sleeve, just like you did with the sleeve cap, and that will make this process a lot easier because then you'll just have to pull that thread again and it will gather up nice and evenly all the way around. So here I am doing that basting stitch around the bottom of the organza sleeve. Now I just take that thread, pull it through, and start to gather the bottom portion of the sleeve. And you can see this makes the opening a lot smaller. Once I do that, I'm going to take the band from the original sleeve, pin it together, right sides together, and then stitch. And this is how it will look in the end. You just turn it inside out, and that band gives you a nice clean finish at the bottom of the sleeve. Voila! Now we just need to connect the sleeve to the t-shirt. You're going to place the sleeve inside the shirt. You want to turn it inside out and match up the underarm seam with the underarm seam of the t-shirt. Find a middle and pin the top shoulder portion to the top of the sleeve, and then just evenly spread out the gathers all the way around and pin. I'm not going to speed this portion up so that you can see how this looks on the inside. Okay, now I removed the sleeve arm from the machine because that just makes it a lot easier to sew on the sleeve. And I'm going to start right before the underarm part of the sleeve and just stitch at about 5/8 of an inch all the way around. As you're stitching, make sure that you're not sewing over any folds of fabric underneath. So sometimes you may have to stick your hand inside just to make sure that everything is staying nice and flat. But you want to make sure that those gathers are spread out evenly. All right, I'm just going to run through this really quickly, doing the other sleeve, just as you can see. Turn it inside out, insert the sleeve into the right side of the shirt, line up that underarm seam, pin it here at the bottom, find your middle right there, pin it to the top like so, and then spread the rest of those gathers out along the side. And once you get your pins in there, once you get it all spread out nice and neat, then you're going to stitch around. And there we have it, your elevated t-shirt. I absolutely love the way this turned out. You could also use a contrasting color or fabric. I could have used black organza to set out the on lock, or even a gold organza would have been nice to accentuate the faith portion. But either way it goes, I'm really happy the way this turned out, and I hope you'll try this too. All right, you guys, thanks for joining, and I'll see you next week. Bye.